Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of such novels as Touch Your Nose and Jacoby Street, and founder of Engine Books. Let's see what we have today. Hello, we are here on a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. We have authors from the Breakwater Books collection, Us Now, stories from the Quilted Collective on the line. And they're going to be answering some of the questions most posed by you, the listeners of the Write Project podcast. On the line, we have Tzu-Hao. We have Xaiver Michael Campbell, as well as collection editor Lisa Moore. Let's begin. Xaiver, what other authors are you friends with, and how do they help you become a better writer?
Well, Lisa Moore, my friend slash mentor. I would like to call her my mentor, but definitely she helps me. She tells me to get out of my head, which is a great thing. But I'm like stuck on a detail of something. She's very much like, that doesn't matter. Like, you need to just keep writing and it'll just like work itself out, which has helped me tremendously. It does usually result in me having to edit a lot, but at least it's something to edit is better than having to write something.
Big time. Done is better than perfect. Like, yes. I'd rather have something done than have it be perfect because I can work with it later. Yeah. Thank you very much, Xaiver. And what did you think, Sue?
Always and first and foremost, my incredible gratitude for Lisa Moore. I've actually been a fan of her work even before participating in her workshop that led to the creation of Us Now. And then, of course, by being there, I met other, some more established, some more of emerging artists like myself. So the privilege of working with also a group of racialized writer is that sometimes you don't have to explain the discomfort sometimes, and I don't know how else to explain that. Like, it's just that you don't have to explain the narrative of sometimes I experience these things because of the way I look like, or because of the culture I come from. I don't understand your concept of your freedom or independence to a certain extent, that it's not the same as my definition of it. And there's conversations sometimes I have to give primers to folks that might not be from a similar background, but for some of the common shared cultural heritages and the traditions and stereotypes, for lack of a better term, sometimes they help and they don't help. But in a setting with other racialized writers, I didn't need to put down the rules of engagement first before I can be very honest and open and sometimes even vulnerable. And that was a very refreshing and wonderful experience. And then, of course, Lisa was just, she's an ally in every possible way, and she's supportive. So it's good to be able to have that space to be safe and creative and open, and then have Lisa guide me professionally to sharpen it into a piece of prose that could be presented. So it was just a general all-around wonderful experience.
Oh, good. Okay. Lovely. That sounds wonderful. I especially like what you're talking about there about, like, I don't know if this is the right word because I'm very much paraphrasing. You didn't say this at all, but like letting your guard down and being able to like not do that pre-explain stuff. And I also like I love Canada, but there's things about Canada that I would change, and there's things about Canada that I would in the right circumstances complain about. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a complainer, but like, yeah, if I'm at a party and it's like, this, I want it changed kind of thing. You're sitting around for having a drink or something like that. One thing I notice about my friends who've come from away, for lack of a better term, is that they always feel like they have to say that, like I just said, they always feel like they have to preface a complaint with, I really like being in Canada. It must be just nice to be around people where you don't have to preface that, like, I'm glad I'm here, but when you're making a complaint, like just get right into the complaints. We all have them, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like it's not that, like, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a very, very proud Newfoundlander. I always refer to myself as a Taiwanese townie. Yeah, very, very proud townie, by the way. The flies and I do not get along, so it's all good. And I am very grateful for the changes and the growth and my family's ability to settle and grow here. But, the other thing is like you said, like there are components to what has made up Canadian history, especially in light of recent events when it comes to discoveries of residential schools. Like there are some parts of the history that no matter how you can't be proud of it. And I don't think there is any shame or harm in admitting that. It's just it's another step of growing up and going forward as a nation. And like, I mean, there's, again, back to the idea of, there's a predominant narrative, but in between the cracks of this narrative, there's always been other stories filling in the space. So, I've had people, which is hilarious. I have people say to me that, oh, like so and so are coming over and, trying to change who we are. It's like, you're talking to me. I look this way, and they'll tell me, but you're not like them. But what makes me not like them? Like, you need to explain this to me because, I love this place as much as you do, but I know that it is not a perfect place because there's no such thing as a perfect place.
Well, I mean, and this comes back to creative destruction. You know what I mean? Like you can't survive. A culture can't survive without new input. You know what I mean? It has never happened, and it never will happen. Change is good. Diversity is good. Diversity just I mean, like a culture that's completely left unto its own, both metaphorically and realistically, will destroy itself from just incest within 8 generations. You know what I mean? Like you need new.
I think it's interesting because so I have some friends who are like, I am by no means a scientist in any way, shape, or form, but that conversation sounds really similar to the concept of actually biological evolution, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That it is already reflected in nature that by the very nature of things, diversity is what encourage growth and encourage evolution and lets you adapt, move on, and continue to be a part of the world. So why wouldn't you do that creatively? It's the two things, it's the physical and the metaphysical coming together to make sense.
Big time. Like cultural evolution and biological evolution, to me, there doesn't need to be a distinction. Like they are unbelievably similar. You know what I mean? Not that we're going to become XMen all of a sudden, but you know.
I mean, if I grew adamantium claws tomorrow, I won't have a problem with it. But
yeah, that's true. That's true. You'd have to grow the bone claws and get the adamantium put on.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Anyway.
Still, bone claws would still be pretty cool. I'd be down with that.
Yeah. Can you tell I'm a nerd?
I'm a nerd.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that you didn't give me a weird look when it, like, I love bringing up to some people, the claws aren't metal, right? And they're like what? What is a word that you cannot spell?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Can't do it. No matter how many times I've sang that song, cannot spell it.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a reasonable one, but that's I can't spell the word restaurant if you paid me $1 million.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, no, I will try to put a U in there where a U doesn't belong, or a I just I don't know what's wrong with me.
I will say though, the Canadian English versus US English versus British English stuff, I do get those mixed up.
Drives me insane. Yeah.
I did a semester overseas in Scotland, and I spelled everything the Canadian way, thinking that would be okay. And I had a professor who sent it back and said, "You're spelling this incorrectly." I'm like, "But this is the Canadian way." But apparently there's certain words that the Americans spell like the Brit, and the rest is us Canadians, and somewhere in between is how the Scots fit in your words. So.
But like at some point I'm like, okay, like, but your professor in Scotland, you'd think he would know, oh, this is one of those words that some people spell differently, and it's all about like I hate that correction, but like I'm bad for being inconsistent. Like my editor finally made a style guide kind of thing for like this is what we do kind of thing. But like before then, I would just pick and choose, which is just wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like a book should not be half British English and half Canadian English. Like,
listen, it adds the spice of life, and then in the right context, it could be right.
Yeah.
It could be a literary technique.
Yeah, yeah. It's a reflection of both parts of me. No,
That's
not at all. How do you select names for your characters?
Mm, I try to, so it depends. Like for me, I guess so I'm bilingual. So depending on which language I'm writing or what character I'm writing, but typically when it comes to names, I will look up the significance. So in Chinese, this is a lot easier because each character has a very distinct meaning. I know, like, even in the sense of the more predominantly Anglo names, like, even for yourself, like Matthew, for instance, has a meaning that probably most people don't know. But if you look it up,
Gift
there
of
is.
God.
Yes, there you go. So, but like most people wouldn't look at you like, wouldn't say Matthew a gift to God, from God.
Well, you
But
don't know me. No, I'm joking.
of course. But in my case, like my name's Tzu-Hao. Tzu is a character for childlike, but it's also the same character bestowed on Confucius and Lao Tzu. And how is the word that you used for describing the way, the effervescence of moonlight?
Oh, I like that.
So, you put these two characters together, like it gives you an idea of the one who named me. It gives you an idea of how he or she thinks of me. Whereas I find in a lot of the Western naming, it's almost, you just like the way it sounds, but you don't necessarily know what the significance is behind the names. So for me, I always have to look that up. And then I got to find one that I like phonetically, because I also like classical music and I like the way certain things sound. So yeah.
Western names, I find they're all, I mean, aside from ones that have been stereotypically like devil, like Damien, you know what I mean? Like devil characters or stuff
Yes.
like that. Like they're all nice. Like one of my main characters is named Alex, and Alex means hero of the people. Oh, what a great thing for a heroic character, a name to have, you know what I mean? But they're all like that. Like there's no everyone's a hero in Western language. I wonder what that says about us.
I mean, and it's, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because, I mean, obviously I think name is a gift. So you don't want to give a child with a name has like certain negative connotations. So like,
No,
if you look
nobody's named
from that way,
Adolf anymore.
exactly. Oh, thank God. But which is a shame. I'm sure Adolf, before it was ruined, it was a perfectly nice name. So
Yeah. I can't imagine so, but yeah, I can't divorce it from that. That's interesting. A friend of mine was, I can't remember if they were answering this question or if it was just a conversation, but they made a distinction between names and nicknames and said that you can tell just a lot about a character. She put a lot of thought into naming of the characters and will give all of her characters nicknames because her thought process was the character's given name tells you where they came from culturally, like basically who their parents are, what their parents' values were, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But their nickname is reflective of who they actually are because it was given to them by their friends and their peers and sometimes chosen like themselves, kind of
Right.
thing. So if you have both and if you put thought into both, you can say a lot all at once. And I'm like, oh, I'm never going to be smart enough to put that much thought into it.
No, but that's really fascinating, actually. And actually, on that subject, so the way I pronounce my name in English, Tzu-Hao, that's actually an anglicized pronunciation. Like the actual name in Mandarin is Tzu-Hao. So Hao aside, Zi is not a sound that exists in English. So the reason why I chose Tzu-Hao was because the first teacher I ever met here, who really took me under his wing and tried to help me integrate into the school, he pronounced my name Tzu-Hao. So I always tell people I'm Tzu-Hao because that's how he said my name, and I felt that was important enough memory to upkeep. And I also usually a lot of time I tell people, like, you can call me Tzu-Hao, but if it's easier, you can just call me Sue. So for me, it's a nickname, right? So when I'm Sue, I'm a very different person. I'm a Canadian. I'm the girl that goes out and play ugly sticks with my friends sometimes, if that's what mood strikes. But if I'm Tzu-Hao, I'm quieter. I'm more contemplative. I read slightly different books. So it's interesting that you brought that up, that the name and nickname are different, because depending on how in which language I think of myself, I do act a little bit differently.
I was about to ask you that question. I was about to ask you if it was okay to ask it, but I've read this study, because again, armchair anthropologist, about bilingual people. When you mentioned you were bilingual, I was like, ooh, I've got to ask her this.
Mhm.
But like, where they basically like ask people who are bilingual, like say 10 words to describe yourself, and they ask them in both languages. So say English and French kind of thing. And there was always some crossover, but there was some different, and rationally, like as a monolingual person, like I can't grasp
Mhm.
that, because I would think that I would just say the same 10 words in a different language, but it's not. Like language is so tied to identity that like you think of yourself,
Mhm.
or apparently you think of yourself differently when in the other mode of language, which is just mind blowing to me.
Yeah. And I mean, there's certain words that just, it doesn't matter how great or talented a translator or even transliterator you have, it just doesn't express the same level of feelings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, big time, big time. There's so many language, like I there's so many words we don't have in English. Like I'm always just like in awe and very like um jealous of some of the words that are in other languages that describe like super specific feelings. You know what I mean? I feel like English, it's like happy, sad, angry, nothing else. That is all. Like, oh my. Thank you very much, Sue. Xaiver, how do you select names for your characters?
Oh, that one. That I have been trying. I want what I want. Okay. I've been calling. I haven't been changing names, which you should probably not. This is me rambling first, and then I'll think of an answer. But I have not been selecting names so far. What I need to do that. So I've gone. Okay, now I guess you could. This is a part of the answer. I'm really bad at selecting. I've used my own last name as a character name before. So yeah, I've just tried to just think of the most random names possible, and just like lump them together, or think of people's names and mix them up, like swap out a first name and pair it with someone's last name, and just do that until I have a character.
I think we all do that. Yeah, that's proper. Yeah, cool, good. What did you do with the first money you ever made from writing? You get that first bit in your hand. Someone has paid for your words. What did you do with it?
What did I do with it? It's so bad. I put it in a drawer. I got the check. It was a check for my short story. I got it and I put it in a drawer. I was like, oh my God, they paid me. They really paid me. I was like, whoa. I put it away for a while. Eventually, I definitely spent it eventually, but I could not tell you what I bought with it. I definitely was like, ooh, I think I still have it. I still have it. It's not in a drawer anymore. It's probably with all my receipts now, but I'm like, wow. It has like the magazine on it. It has like everything. I'm like, oh, this is great. So yeah, it was just too precious to spend immediately. Awesome. Until that like charm wore off and it disappeared. I don't know what it disappeared into.
Yep. All right. I like it. Thank you very much, Xaiver. And what did you think, Lisa?
Well, I think probably the first real serious money that I made with my fiction came from a Canada Council grant. Oh. And I was able to live on that for as long as it took to write a collection of stories, or probably almost as long. I'm sure that I made money in other ways during that time when I was writing my first collection of stories. But I think it was $10,000, and I had a child, and that money was, I mean, I had a husband too, but that money just allowed me the time to give some time to writing, and I remember it was just hugely important.
That short story book you're talking about, that's open, right?
No, it was called Degrees of Nakedness. That was the first short story collection I wrote.
Really? I've read Degrees of Nakedness. I didn't know that was your first. I always thought it was open. I love Degrees of Nakedness. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for reading it.
Oh no, yeah, no, my pleasure. One of my definitely one of my top, I'd say top 20 books of all time, and I'm quite a ridiculous reader.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nicer if it was number one, but I'm not. I'm sorry.
I'm happy with top 20. Believe me.
Yeah, yeah. I read about like 500 books a year, so it's hard to break that top 10.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And what did you think, Sue? Whether it was for a short story or an essay or whatever, that first bit of money, what did you do with it?
Took my mother out for supper.
That's a good answer. I like that.
No, she didn't eat the entire check, but you know.
Okay. That's good. That's a good distinction. Which, I mean, if she did, it could mean one or two things. Like, oh wow, you ate that much, or oh wow, the check was that small. And I'd believe either, you know?
We'll leave that to the imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever gone on any what the sheet calls literary pilgrimages? So have you ever traveled to write, to learn about writing, or to a writer's retreat, or anything of that nature? Travel and writing.
I've never gone on a trip specifically for writing, but I have gone to places where I was inspired to write about after. So one of the more recent memories I have of such a place that inspiring that kind of feeling, the city of Kyoto in Japan. So okay. It was actually my very first time there, but there was something really hauntingly familiar about the place, but I have never come close to the city. And yet when I set foot there, I felt like I was going home. So there was something really strange and mystical and wonderful, depending on how you want to look at it. And it could entirely just be because I had been in the vicinity when I was a younger child in very similar architectures. Well, I've never been there, but I didn't have that feeling in other places that I have been before or the first time. That's the only place that's ever gave me a sense of peace and homecoming. So I had written in one of the workshops that we did as part of our I guess development going towards the publication of Us Now, we were asked to write about a setting, and that's what instantly came to mind.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. I find that question, I don't know, that's an interesting question to ask you, because I feel like most people I ask, and I think like the question is phrased in such a way that it almost assumes that someone is like me, only travels in books. You know what I mean? Like, have you ever gone somewhere to write, to get inspired to write? When it's like, well, like a lot of the stories in Us Now are, depending on how broad a net you want to put over the word travel, are inspired by travel, in that they're inspired by the Canadian immigrant experience. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost a very like ethnocentric question, you know what I mean? Where it's like, have you ever gone somewhere different and get inspired to write? And like, sorry, I'm gonna have to cut out that word. I'm gonna have to cut out what I just said. Yeah, idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
no, but I mean, you know, like, I think it's actually really good that you recognize that in conversation, because until you've come across someone who, you know, right from a different perspective, how would you know? It's always, you know, that give and take, right? That we're going to come up with things that are unknown or unfamiliar, and how you react to it and grow from it is entirely a choice. I think that's the sparkling and amazing part about, you know, being flawed, needing to change, needing to grow, or encountering the unknown and change, because that's where the magic happens. Like, if you're always doing the same thing, it's just this back and forth, right? Can you hear my kids in the background?
I can. They sound amazing. They want to be on the radio. I can't blame them. Yeah. We'll clue up before too long, because it sounds like people are tired of you being at the computer, which is fair. Do you think that having a big ego helps an author, or do you think it's harmful?
I think having a big ego is harmful for anybody, not just an author. I mean, it's just, you know, it's important to take pride in your accomplishments, but when it gets to the point of being egotistical, you're blinding yourself and really cutting yourself short and selling yourself short, for that matter. Because I find that once you hit that level of hubris, really your ability to see past yourself diminishes, and then I think that would negatively impact your ability to create and continue to grow.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I don't think we've ever gotten another answer to that question. I think the closest we've come to another answer to that question is someone dividing, like making a distinction between confidence and egotism. You know what I mean? Like one negative version of the other. Yeah.
And what did you think, Lisa?
Well, I guess if you happen to have one, there's nothing you can do about it. I think it's probably a little bit of hubris, because I really think that stories exist on the backs of other stories, and a well-read community is one where all books are find an audience and are shared, and stories are shared, and we all learn from each other. So to imagine that somehow you're at the top of a heap, I think is an illusion. I think it really is a symbiotic relationship, the relationship between writers, whether they recognize that or not, or whether, because of course, sometimes I desperately want someone to love my book or write a good review or buy it, and read it. Sometimes I want that with all my heart and soul, but I do think that it's hubris to have an ego about it.
I agree, and I think that a lot of authors I've met that I would describe that way, it kind of confuse confidence with ego. Like, ego is confidence gone out of control,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you need a certain degree of confidence just to put your work out there, but at some point it works against you.
Yes, confidence I think is good.
Yeah.
Ego is not so good.
Yeah. I'll just ask one more, and then won't take up too much of your time. I've already taken up way too much of your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love this question, actually. I can't believe I skipped it. Lisa Moore, have you ever read anything that made you think differently about the concept of fiction?
I'm sure every book I read has done that to me. If I followed it through, if I finished it particularly, I think, I mentioned Virginia Woolf earlier, and I think that she really made me think about the concept of fiction in a very different way. She really writes from stream of consciousness, and so we see the thoughts of her characters as they happen in real time. We feel what they feel, the fluttering of emotion and mood, and there's an immediacy in that fiction that made me realize that there's a different way to know characters. We can know them from the inside. And that was incredibly exciting to me when I happened upon her books.
Excellent. Okay, that's a wonderful answer. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'll do a pretend sign off there now, and then I'll ask if there's anything else you wanted to talk about or anything like that. But I'll do a pretend sign off, and we can pretend to say goodbye before we actually hang up.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa Moore. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the Write Project podcast. You're a wonderful person to have on the show, and a great part of the writing community here in Newfoundland. So thank you again.
Thank you, Matthew. What a pleasure. What a pleasure.
Thank you. Lies. Horrible lies.
Xaiver, do you think that having a big ego about your work is a good thing for authors? Do you think it helps, or do you think it's generally a bad thing?
I definitely would err on the side of pride goeth before a fall. Yeah. I'd say it's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.